What Really Happened with your host, Mike Rivero. You're listening to the Republic Broadcasting Network, where you'll find out what the Fukushima's going on.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It is Wednesday, December 7th, 2016, hump day, middle of the weekday, starting that long, slow glide down to Pauha on Friday. And, of course, obviously, it is Pearl Harbor Day. And the commemorations are well underway here on the island of Oahu. Earlier today, at the exact moment the Japanese started their air attack, military planes flew over and woke everybody up who was trying to sleep in late here. And relevant to the debate of real news versus fake news, after 75 years, the truth behind Pearl Harbor is finally coming out and is generally known by the population at large. It's been known internally by corporate media and politicians and military historians all along, but the general public is now becoming aware of that grand deception by Roosevelt to get us into that war with Nazi Germany, using Japan as his back door. And one of the things that we have on the website today are some video explorations of a Japanese mini-sub that's lying on the floor of the Pacific just outside the mouth of Pearl Harbor. And they're showing all the videos and everything, but the part of the story they're not telling you involves the USS Ward, which spotted and sank the Japanese mini-sub hours before the actual air attack on Pearl Harbor began. Now, the Ward's commander, Lieutenant Commander William W. Outerbridge, reported the sighting and sinking of the mini-sub, but the report was ignored. Now, the official story enshrined in movies like Tora, Tora, Tora is that the duty officer assumed the report was in error because nobody was expecting Japan to attack. Now, that particular perversion of history is undermined by the fact that the Hawaiian newspapers had been running banner headlines all week long saying Japan was about to attack any moment. Now, we know that Franklin Roosevelt wanted the attack to happen. He wanted it to be a surprise. He needed bloody shirts. There had actually been a Navy training exercise operating north of Oahu directly in the path of the oncoming Japanese fleet. It was Exercise 191. And Roosevelt called up Admiral Kimmel and said, "You will bring that exercise back to port right now." Didn't give a reason. Roosevelt needed to get them out of the way because if they'd stayed where they were doing their exercises, the Japanese fleet would have stumbled on them and the game would have been over. So I think more than likely what's going on is the duty officer who took the Ward's report was in on this little scam and was ordered not to raise any alarms or alerts, because if Pearl Harbor had gone on alert following the report by the Ward, the Japanese attackers would have run into fully manned guns and fighters already in the air, and they would have been wiped out. Now, for decades, the crew of the USS Ward were castigated as liars and fools and idiots for their claim to have sunk the Japanese mini-sub hours before the actual air attack began, much as the survivors of the USS Liberty have been declared liars and fools for saying Israel's attack on their ship was intentional. And then, of course, in 2002, students from the University of Hawaii's Oceanographic Department discovered the wreck of the mini-sub. And it's been documented heavily ever since. It's still down there. There's been some talk about raising it and returning whatever remains of the two-man crew, if any, to Japan. But apparently, as part of the 75th celebration, there was also an ROV tour inside the Arizona, the first time the inside of the ship had been seen since that day 75 years ago. And there were no human remains to be seen because if the ship is open, the crabs are going to get in. Same thing with the Titanic. I know Ballard wanted to declare it as the final resting place of those who died on the sinking, but any actual remains of those people are long gone here. All right, let's grab ourselves a quick phone call from Bob in Las Vegas. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. Mahalo nui loa for taking my call.
You got it. Iko mamai.
Wanted to ask you first. I haven't heard you mention the meeting that took place a few days ago at Trump Tower between Ivanka Trump and St. Al of the Human Cause Global Warming Church.
I actually hadn't paid that much attention to it because it's a lot more fun going after Al Gore with all the snow and ice that's coming on down rather than meeting with Ivanka Trump. And, you know, Gore's still out there. He's made a huge amount of money off of this scam. We'll be getting into that a little bit later in the show.
Yeah. Mike, did you see Madeleine Albright, that evil, miserable scum, is at it again, calling for total war in Syria?
Yeah, but that's what she's always done, and it seems like we do have these individuals like Madeleine Albright or Hillary Clinton or Ersabat Bathory who just love the sight of blood as long as it's other people's blood, and unfortunately, if we allow them into positions of power and authority, the blood will flow.
Yeah, I mean, to borrow a phrase of hers, I don't think there's a hot enough place in hell for her. And but I'd be really surprised if the U.S. That's how evil this government's become. This deep state, this the elite. I'd be surprised if they don't act in Syria. I'm expecting them to do something. I really am. Either, like you said yesterday, a decapitating strike on Damascus, on Assad, and then just pull out one of those convenient excuses that
we thought there were ISIS terrorists in Assad's bedroom, or some, ISIS is hiding in Assad's bedroom closet. We had to kill him. Let's take a brief pause here real quick to do a shout out to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. And I am fully in agreement with you. I'm still expecting the U.S. to try and find some way to end run the fact that Syria is, for all intents and purposes, back under the control of the Syrian government.
Absolutely. Oh, two last things, Mike. First, the site, the Duran, that I really enjoy, Alexander Mercouris, it's been down the past day and a half. I don't know what's going on.
Well, a lot of sites are under attack. Yeah, a lot of sites are under attack. My server continues to be under attack. Something wrecked the RBN podcast page for replays of my show. It's been down since December 2nd. They are working on it to try and get the podcast back up and running. But there's a lot of skullduggery going on out there. We're literally, as James Corbett says, right now it's a war between the establishment and the real world, and the real world is winning and is going to win, but in the meantime, there's going to be a lot of chaos.
Mike, you may have noticed, I'll just finish with this, you may have noticed that Time named Donald Trump as Person of the Year.
Yes, I did notice that.
They had to get their little jab in, though, and say, President-elect Donald Trump of the divided states. They couldn't just say United States. Of course, if Hillary had won, it would have been United States. But because Trump won with his 306 electoral college votes and his huge majority in terms of winning most of the counties in this country, it's divided states.
Well, so, you can almost hear the teeth clenching of whoever was writing it, because Time had a sidebar article on, how we came to choose Donald Trump, and emphasizing we're not saying he did good, he was just, brought about the most change, and it was sort of darning with faint praise kind of journalism going on there. But the reality is the online voting heavily favored Vladimir Putin, and Time sure as heck was not going to put Putin on the front page as Person of the Year. So they had to go for Donald Trump, but at the same time, they couldn't just let it go and say he's Time Magazine's Man of the Year. They had to get in there with all these little hints about saying, we don't think he's very good. You shouldn't think he's very good. But, yes, we're going to make him Time Magazine's Man of the Year. Yeah, well,
it didn't prevent me. I had to do this. I had to post something I have this Facebook posting that I use, and I just use it basically to make the liberals upset. I go after them. I go after CNN, the corporate media, and I posted something on Time Magazine's page. And just seeing these comments of these liberals are so ignorant, like you said. They're narrow-minded, they're uninformed, they're arrogant in their ignorance, as you always say. This one fella said, Hitler and Stalin also were Time People of the Years. And Men of the Year at that time. And I just had to reply and said, yeah, and so was Bill Clinton and Obama. So what's your point, genius?
Well, when Time Magazine put Hitler as Person of the Year, it was because he had pulled off this economic miracle in Germany by kicking out the private central bank.
I believe it was 1938, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. And it was certainly before the war began, and Hitler was Time Magazine's Person of the Year because of the German miracle, where he had taken Germany, which was just in this Weimar inflation and just struggling, and he solved it by kicking out the private central bank imposed on them by the Treaty of Versailles and issuing a value-based currency. And Germany's economy lit up, and that was a major, major reason why they began the push for World War II against Germany because the other nations enslaved to private central banks cannot ever compete with a nation with a free economy. And so the only thing they can do is try and destroy it.
What these liberals don't realize is the selection is based on who had the biggest impact during the past year. That's what it's all about. And that was Donald Trump, clearly. But last thing, Mike, you mentioned you're going to have an article posted on your website about the Nazis. Has that been posted yet? Because you were talking about it with John from Barbados a few days back.
Article about the Nazis. It doesn't ring a bell. I don't spend a lot of time.
You said you were going to post something on them. I don't know if.
I'll have to go back and figure out what that was. I don't remember what I said or did like 2-3 days ago, unfortunately.
Okay. Well,
I don't care. Once it's out of my mouth, it's history. I don't care anymore.
That's it. Well, mahalo nui loa. That's my Hawaiian word of the day.
All right. Well, actually, it's a couple of words strung together here. We're going to let you go. Thank you very much for the phone call. Before we take any more phone calls, I want to go back and hit some news story because the circus for the recounts is still going on. And you probably have already noticed Hillary shills are all over social media trying to deny all these stories about massive election fraud and the Michigan recount going against Hillary up until the point it was called off, and they're out there saying, this is the fake news, this is the fake news. But we're talking about reports coming from CBS, the local affiliate in Michigan. And by the way, none of the major national network news shows have yet to cover all the election fraud being uncovered in these recounts. So basically, up to the point where in Wisconsin, Hillary is losing votes left and right. She's down 32,000 votes. Trump's lead is gaining. So that is a complete wasted effort in terms of Jill Stein and Hillary Clinton. Now, as you know, the Michigan recount has been stopped because the courts have ruled that Jill Stein, who filed the lawsuit, cannot claim aggrieved status. The recount could not possibly change her result, and therefore she lacks standing to do this. But a lot of stuff has been uncovered in Michigan. There are multiple cases where ballot boxes do not have the correct number of ballots in them. And in one Detroit precinct, there was a box of ballots with what appeared to be an unbroken seal. Everything looked proper. And the tag on the box said there were 306 ballots. The logbook said 306 ballots. The ticket said 306. When they opened the box, there were only 50 paper ballots in there. And this box came from an area that voted very heavily for Donald Trump. Now, Michigan has a law that says in the event of a recount, any ballot boxes that don't match the paper record in terms of how many ballots should be in there are disqualified from the recount on the assumption that somebody has tried to stuff the ballot boxes after the fact. And there are indications that was going on in Pennsylvania when they all of a sudden magically came up with an additional 22,000 votes for Hillary Clinton. But it is widespread. It is just epidemic. Right now, they're saying 1/3 of the heavily Democratic precincts in Michigan are going to be disqualified from the recount because of all these problems they're finding with ballot boxes that appear to have been altered after the night of the election. Now, Philadelphia and Pittsburgh have done their recount, and they found just 5 votes that were previously uncounted. And this is a major blow to what's going on. It's a hideous waste of time and money. So the recount has failed in Pennsylvania. It's failing in Wisconsin. It's been stopped in Michigan. So what is a disgruntled Hillary Clinton going to do? File for a recount in Florida. I am not kidding you. 3 Florida voters have just filed a lawsuit for a recount in Florida. And by the way, up in Pennsylvania, there's going to be a court hearing on Friday. They may probably will pull the plug on the argument that forcing a recount in Pennsylvania will cause them to miss the Electoral College, which, of course, is the real goal here. And that's why they've launched this thing down in Florida. And they beat the deadline for filing for the recount, for suing for the recount, by just 12 minutes. They're trying to run out the clock here. Hillary's goal here is to block as many Trump electors from taking part in the Electoral College on December 19th so that her handful of bribed, blackmailed, and threatened electors can change their votes from Trump to Hillary and steal the White House for her. And I would like to remind everybody of the wise words of John F. Kennedy. Those who make peaceful revolution impossible make violent revolution inevitable. Hillary is risking the start of a civil war in this country in her lust for power and glory and fame. Now, over in Colorado, Colorado is one of the states that has a law saying the state electors must vote in accord with the election results in the state. And a group of, well, actually just two Democratic Colorado electors are filing a lawsuit to overturn that law. They're calling themselves Hamilton electors, and they're trying to get the law changed. They're trying to change the rules after the fact to get the result they want. And basically what they're saying they're doing is they're not encouraging GOP electors to vote for Hillary Clinton. They just want them to vote for some third-party candidate so Trump cannot get the 270 electoral votes. What happens then? The election gets thrown into the House of Representatives. Who controls the House of Representatives? The Republican Party. And remember, there's a provision in the Constitution. If Congress does not believe the Electoral College acted in good faith, they can override. This thing is out of control. Now, down in Texas, there's one of the electors, Chris Supran, who has gone public saying, I absolutely will not vote for Donald Trump, and I encourage everybody, blah, 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 blah. And there are petitions already out there circulating, demanding that the Texas GOP replace him as an elector. And maybe they should vet those electors a little bit. This guy is claiming to be Republican and a conservative, but you actually look deeper into his background, it gets a little bit murky. Now, first of all, Supran did sign a pledge last summer that he would support the Republican nominee. Remember when they still thought Ted Cruz might get it, and they were running around and saying everybody has to sign a pledge that you'll support the Republican nominee. They got Donald Trump to sign one, Supran signed one, and now basically, his signature is worthless. But if you go and you look at his Twitter timeline, it's littered with all this Never Trump garbage. He's using megaphone strategies as his PR firm. Its clients include Netroots Nation, Green for All, and Demand Progress. So this so-called conservative is using a far-left company founded by Van Jones as a PR firm. He's a rhino, a Republican in name only, and he's a Hillary plant. And the Republicans ought to vet their Electoral College members just a little bit better in order to avoid this kind of confusion. Now, Cornel West has come on out, and he's basically questioning Bernie Sanders' observation that he thinks the Democratic Party can be reformed. And Cornel West is saying, no, it's too far gone. I am fully in agreement. Our entire existing political structure is corrupted beyond redemption. Both parties. The system itself, it's a systemic problem. The whole system is totally corrupted. All right, let's grab some phone calls here. Dustin in New Jersey, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, hi, Mike. Yeah, I just want to, there won't be a decap attack against Assad because the S-400, like the Ministry of Defense said, they will surprise you for their range. So Damascus is protected. There's still, Aleppo's finished. The rebels have realized that. So, this game is almost over, and once Trump comes in, he's not going to support these people. These people are going to be left to hang.
Yeah, but the war hawks, they're trying as hard as they can to get a major hot war with Russia and or China going before Trump can take office. And I think after December 19th, when the Electoral College does finally say, yes, Donald Trump is the President of the United States of America, you're going to see these efforts really start to ramp up. I think they're maintaining a low key right now on the hope that Hillary is going to succeed in stealing the White House, but that is looking less and less likely, even with this new attempt down in Florida. Thank you for the phone call, Dustin. We got to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here, and we're going to go back to the phones here. Steve in California, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, I know you mentioned that some states treat the Electoral College a little bit different, but if we all understand and recognize that the Electoral College representative merely hands in the envelope for those Electoral College votes for that representing the state's vote for that individual, that candidate, if we just make this a formality, we can make it a formality that the individual, the candidate wins that state, so they win those Electoral College votes, and remove that one person that actually hands over that envelope, then those threats won't matter anymore. And I think that's where we need to go with this whole thing, is that the state's vote represents the Electoral College votes. Those are handed over through a proxy or whatever. There's no actual handing over the envelope. The votes go to that candidate, and that's all there is. Those threats won't matter anymore. The intimidation won't matter. I think that's where we need to go with this.
Well, I think if the Electoral College votes by secret ballot, that would certainly end the possibility, because, when the electors get the phone call at night saying, we told you what would happen to you if you didn't vote for Hillary, and they can say, I voted for Hillary. I don't know who voted for Trump. It wasn't me. Go kill somebody else. But, again, we're already seeing the Democratic whiners out there screaming, we've got to get rid of the Electoral College. It's defiling the will of the people. Well, the Electoral College exists for the same reason the Senate exists, to balance the influence between the general population and the sovereign states. Because remember, when this country was started, the states had the authority and the central federal government acted merely as an umpire. Of course, now we're in the Washington, D.C. empire at this point. So if there were no Electoral College, our presidents and vice presidents would be chosen by California, Texas, Pennsylvania, and Florida. That would be it. The other states would have nothing to say about it. The Electoral College does give those other states something to say about it, and there has to be a mechanism to preserve that balance.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but to undo everything that's been done already, the Electoral College itself, she would have to basically sway 75 electoral votes away, correct?
Well, if they had succeeded in getting Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania disqualified from the Electoral College, it would take only 15. But it looks like that is really failing, and so the number of electors she's going to have to swing is rapidly growing. And again, all it's going to take is 2 members of Congress, 1 representative and 1 senator, to think that the Electoral College was not acting in good faith, and Congress can basically convene and decide what they're going to do about it, and possibly select the president and vice president themselves.
Well, that will single-handedly undermine the whole electoral process. That will create a civil war and a revolution, no doubt about it.
Well, it all depends. I mean, if they hand it to Hillary, absolutely it will.
Yes,
but, again, Hillary supporters are still pushing that she won the popular vote, but looking at all the massive election fraud we're seeing in these recounted states, the estimated 3 million plus non-citizens who voted, some of the things that we're seeing, apparently in Michigan, Hillary votes were being recounted 6 times. They were run through the machine 6 times, the same ballot. And, they're trying to say, oh, it's an old machine, it was cranky, we had to run it through again to make sure it was counted, and we forgot to change the logs. And it's just absolute ridiculous stuff. The problem is Hillary Clinton has succeeded in turning the entire Democratic Party into the party of whiners, liars, and cheats who think they have a divine right to the nation and its laws and its people. And they really have become a personality cult, and that's what makes them dangerous.
I agree. Hey, thanks, Michael.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go here, and let's see, there we are. Michael Moore is out there, along with so many other people, saying that we have to disrupt the inauguration. He's out there tweeting to his supposed 3 million followers to disrupt Trump's inauguration because, after all, Hillary Clinton won the popular vote. That's not how our elections are done. The claim that she won the popular vote is very much in dispute at this point. If this were a popularity contest, Donald Trump would have concentrated his campaign in those 4 states I mentioned before, California, Pennsylvania, Texas, and Florida, and ignored the rest of the country, and he still would have won. And by the way, yesterday when Claire and I were out and about on our errands, we ran into a couple from Pennsylvania who were here for Pearl Harbor, and what they had to say was very interesting. I'll share it with you when we come back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And as I was mentioning before the break, Yesterday, Claire and I were out and about on our various errands, and we just happened to run into a couple from Pennsylvania. He's retired from the Air Force, and they were out here for Pearl Harbor, and it seems like several years ago, they met a Pearl Harbor survivor living in California, and ever since have come out here every Pearl Harbor Day to meet with him again and attend the commemorations. And one of the things they shared with us is that being in Pennsylvania, they questioned if the election was really as close as was being reported, because outside of the big cities, Trump overwhelmingly was winning the state of Pennsylvania. The so-called flyover country. And, of course, the problem with the flyover country is they think we're flyover people, and we are not. Now, getting on back to this popular vote issue, we do need to keep in mind, we don't know that Hillary Clinton actually won the popular vote. It's probably as fictitious as just about anything else that's been coming out of the Hillary campaign or the Democrats in general this entire election season. Now, where did Hillary score her greatest margins of victory? In California, certainly, which is loaded with illegal immigrants. And the sanctuary cities, also loaded with illegal immigrants and refugees. Now, remember that video that came out in New York where New York elections official was saying, we're not allowed to check for ID. They just put these people on buses and drive them around to vote over and over and over and over again. Now, getting on to Donald Trump, Time Magazine's Person of the Year. Apparently, everyone's saying, oh, he's a businessman, he's going to have conflict of interest, blah, blah, blah. Well, they're forgetting there is a law requiring a presidential blind trust. Bill Clinton violated it. That was the reason for the murder of Vincent Foster. But Trump announced basically that he basically dumped his stock portfolio last June because he was convinced he was going to win. And he wants to be free of all that business entanglement. And apparently, wherever his wealth is, it's out of his control. And there will be a presidential blind trust. It's mandated by law. But it's another one of these attacks by the corporate media. Oh, he's got too much money to be president. He'll be thinking about where his investments are. Well, he dumped his stock portfolio. Now, Donald Trump is out there reiterating that he wants a non-interventionist U.S. military policy. He's talking about building up the military, by which he means get rid of these overpriced, bloated, non-working weapon systems and replace them with something more cost-effective, the way Russia and China does. And that certainly seems to make a lot of sense. But this covert and overt toppling of foreign governments has definitely got to stop. Now, Joe Biden only yesterday threw his hat in the ring for 2020. And I pointed out, Joe, be very careful, stay out of small airplanes, because remember what happened to John F. Kennedy Jr. when he declared for the Senate seat Hillary Clinton coveted. And apparently somebody got that to Joe Biden, or reminded him about that, because as of today, Biden is now saying he will not be running for president in 2020. And he made that declaration while he was receiving the Kennedy Award for human rights and whatever else it is they put on the gold things to make you think he's somebody important here. Now, Boston College faculty have signed a letter demanding the college ban all Trump-inspired hate speech. And this is kind of this liberal bubble thing going on, because most of what everybody says is Trump-inspired hate speech was hate speech created and framed on him. It was all a fiction. I mean, Donald Trump has been in the public eye for 30 years now, and he wasn't called racist or misogynist until he ran against Hillary Clinton. But now that they've created that myth about him, their Boston College faculty says, we're not going to have this First Amendment be gosh darned. We're not going to have anybody talking about anything on Donald Trump's agenda, because we're liberals, and we will always be liberals. We'd rather die than stop being liberals. Now, there's a very bizarre story out here, out in California, and boy, I used to live there. I lived there for a lot of years. I worked in the film industry until my blacklisting, but I got to tell you, I don't recognize the place anymore. Story out of the Los Angeles Times is telling us the Los Angeles Unified School District has set up a hotline and opened extended support sites to respond to a high level of student anxiety about Donald Trump being elected. Oh, see, Donald Trump is having this horrible effect on our children. We have to get rid of Donald Trump for the children. Now, what's been going on here is this entire last year, teachers have been filling their students' head with a lot of nonsense about all the horrors that are going to happen if Trump got elected. He's going to deport you all. He's going to tear your families apart. He's going to tap dance barefoot on your shag carpeting. He's going to pass wind in elevators and all these other things. Well, now Trump got elected, and the students who didn't figure out their teachers were just being liberal propagandists and believed all this crap, they're freaking out. They're now convinced all these things that they were told are going to happen are going to happen. And the school district's now having to deal with this. It isn't Trump and it isn't the students. They created this mess. They wanted to terrorize their children into just being anti-Trump in the hope that that would infect the parents to influence the election. Now, over at Virginia Tech, the snowflakes there have gotten together and created a list of the top 50 microaggressions that offend them. All the things that you say that will offend us. And I have two observations about that. The first is, aren't they supposed to be in colleges and universities to learn job skills instead of running around all the time with this liberal indoctrination and saying, oh, I'm microaggressed, I'm offended, I'm offended. Too bad. You can't have freedom of speech and not be offended. Go ahead, be offended by what I say. I don't care. These kids are wholly unprepared to live and work in the real world. When they get on out there and they have to deal with competition and workplace politics, they're just not prepared to deal with it. They're going to fall down on the floor and cry and kick and scream. I mean, let's be honest. The only microaggression-free places in the world are monasteries and convents. That's it. That's the only place you can go and live where you're not going to hear something that upsets your delicate sensibilities. And our government thinks they're going to wage war against Russia with these as infantry? I don't think so. Now, in the world of real news versus fake news, apparently Donald Trump has fired a member of his transition team for going along with this Pizzagate nonsense. And to be fair with the guy, I mean, so many people were pushing this nonsense. I can understand why maybe this guy fell for it. But Trump has fired the transition team member for echoing this ridiculous Pizzagate nonsense here. Now, Pizzagate has pretty much collapsed as a means to demonize the independent media, although the corporate media is still out there saying, well, these are the same people who think Israel did 9/11, and these are the same people who think there was a conspiracy to kill John F. Kennedy, and these are the people who deny global warming. So how could you listen to anything they say? And so they're back to pushing another piece of nonsense. And this actually goes all the way back to that National Geographic article they had last year about why don't people believe in science anymore? And they went to all this ridiculous stuff, including people who believe the earth is flat. Now, this is utterly ridiculous. This is being, like Pizzagate, like chemtrails, like HAARP, like no plane at the Pentagon, this is poison the well junk being shoved onto the internet to give the corporate media an easy handle to attack and ridicule the independent media and say, they're all nuts and kooks out there. They think the earth is flat. No, we don't. It's another poison the well hoax. Pizzagate didn't work, we'll go to earth is flat. Next they'll come back and I don't know what they're going to come back with. They're getting really desperate and thrashing around here. I actually had somebody post to my YouTube channel about, how can you prove that the earth isn't flat? I mean, if you ignore the Foucault pendulum, then what empirical evidence is there? Well, the fact that the Foucault pendulum does show the earth is moving, that's the important fact there. But consider lunar eclipses. We've all seen them during our lives, and sometimes the moon is high in the sky, and sometimes it's over by the horizon, and always the shadow of the earth being cast on the moon by the sun is circular. Now, the only object that is circular when seen from every single angle is a sphere. And they'll come back and say, well, that's you're saying. No, we're out here to convince you. You should post about the flat Earth on WhatReallyHappened.com, and you know, if you don't post about Pizzagate, then you're a child molester yourself, and you're just trying to protect them. I mean, you can almost smell the panic in how desperate they are to find some way to junk up the independent media as a means of attack. Now then, interesting little story came out of Wall Street on Parade, talking about this website, propornot.com, which was cited as the source for the Washington Post McCarthy-esque smear job on the independent media, saying we're all Russian stooges, we work for Putin, we trade wet, sloppy kisses with all the members of the Politburo, and all this other complete no proof, of course, no documentation. It's just a smear. You know, they're commie stooges. Sorry, the communists are no longer in Russia. The Soviet Union did collapse. You need to catch up on your history. And I had already gone in and looked for who was behind Prop or Not and ran up against domains by proxy. ICANN rules are that you're supposed to provide identification for who owns and operates a website. But for those who are carrying out government black ops and psyops and so forth, there are these private domain registration companies that you will give them money, they will register the domain in their name, cutting off any possibility of tracking back to who these people really are. That's what domains by proxy does, is they provide anonymity for people setting up these bogus websites, like the websites that have been set up to deliberately put out viral hoaxes as another means of trying to discredit the independent media. So Wall Street on Parade did a little bit of digging, and they found out that the entity behind Prop or Not, which is now offering a plug-in that you will plug into your browser so that you will never ever see anything the government doesn't want you to see. They can't censor it at the net level. Now they're trying to trick people into censoring on their own machines. Not going to work. But they tracked their business address to Santa Fe, New Mexico. And it turns out it's one of these offices that serves as an address agent, where it's a single room office in a building, and like 50 different companies claim it's their business address. So whoever set this up has gone to extraordinary means to preserve their anonymity, and yet Washington Post cited them as an authoritative source to declare the independent media all in cahoots with those evil Russians. All right, let's grab a couple quick phone calls. Andy in Texas, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Michael. Let me preface this by saying I'm a Gulf War veteran from 91.
I'm glad you made it back.
And, yeah. Well, what I'm trying to get at here is that you said all wars are banker wars and stuff, and we all took this oath to the Constitution. And we saw how we got into the First World War. We saw how we got into the Second World War, and then Vietnam and so on and so forth, police actions, whatever they're calling it and stuff. And now we're working wars of attrition and aggressiveness, and we're going after all these people in the Middle East and stuff. And so I'm just wondering, and I'm ashamed of what I've done in my life as far as the military goes, simply because I took an oath to the Constitution, and I didn't do anything to stop these wars. I didn't research it to find out if it was a legitimate war. I didn't do anything to stop these wars. And frankly, I'm embarrassed for our government, our military people, simply because they are not they're not living up to the Constitution value that they took. So where are the oath keepers in the military? Even our we were trained as military people to take orders from people above us. And we didn't stop for 1 minute to think, what does this oath mean? We just said, well, that's what got us in the Army. We didn't go back to think about it. And so I'm quite embarrassed to have actually joined the military. And I get tired of hearing these people thanking me for my service. I get tired of people saying, well, we got to give all this credit to our military because it kept us free all this time. No, they didn't. All these wars we were either brought into, we found a way to get into, or we were the aggressor. None of this is legitimate military action that would protect the people of this. We're not protecting our freedom. As we can see, our freedom is dwindling. We're not doing anything the Constitution set forth for us to do when we rose our hand and joined this military service. And I'm disgusted with it. And the people above, the generals and whatnot, they should have been the ones, because they took the same oath I did. They should have been the ones that went to the president and said, nope, we can't do this. It's not constitutional. We didn't need the Supreme Court to figure that one out. It was very simple. It's just very simple, Mike.
Well, first of all, Major General Smedley Butler would agree with you. He wrote a treatise called War is a Racket. But as far as you yourself are concerned, I want you to remember something, okay? You, while you were in the service, acted in good faith, obeying the orders of your superior and carrying out your duty. And so you've got nothing to be ashamed about in regards to that. I don't think you or any of these other people went over there saying, I'm going to go over there with the intent to commit war crimes and cause all this damage. You just realize it looking back. You got snookered by the government. You got snookered by the military. You personally have nothing to feel guilty or ashamed about. You are as much a victim as any of those people in the war zones. And you should be proud that you did keep your commitments and you took your oath and you kept to that oath. And I am going to thank you for your service, even though we realize those who ran the war had foul purposes for it. You did your job, and you kept your promises, and you should feel good about that and stop beating yourself up.
Well, but I'm ashamed that I didn't pay attention to the oath that I took. I just rose my hand and did what they told me to do because I was joining the military, and that oath is everything. And had I paid attention to the oath that I was, I'm upholding and protecting and defending the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and these people weren't our enemies.
Yeah,
so, that's what I'm ashamed of, is that I was misinformed.
Well, yeah, that's right. You were misinformed. You got lied to, okay? So just go easy on yourself. That's all I'm saying. Just go easy on yourself. You got lied to. You are as much a victim as anybody else in the war zone because you were lied to and you were misused. Okay? Got to let you go, Andy.
Okay, thanks,
and we'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're coming up on the top of the hour. Let's cram a couple of phone calls in here before the station break. Ken in Washington, aloha. What's on your mind today?
Aloha. You there?
Yes, you're on the air.
Great. Number one, the last caller, I just wanted to say, it's funny that testosterone has a lot to do with it because when you're young, you're gung-ho, don't put a lot of thought into it. But as you get older, you start thinking about what you did. It's like, maybe that wasn't such a good idea. Anyway, to my point, on the fake news story, I think NPR had a little something. They did a little investigating and found that a guy out of California actually started that pizza thing, and he runs like 25 fake sites, and he gets off.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Throwing things up.
Yeah, it's this one guy. He's got 25 of these websites that are set up to feed bogus news onto the internet in the hopes that people will pick it up. And I think it was the company's name is Disinfometrics or something like that. Or
Yep.
Disinfomedia, I think is the name of it. But he's paid to put junk on the internet so the corporate media can say, oh, look at the junk on the internet. How could you ever possibly trust those people?
Yeah. I mean, and the basic thing is that people have to work. It's hard to find some place that you can't use the corporate media, so I'm trying to find some place that I don't have to spend 6 hours a day researching it. I just want clean, good information. That's apparently very hard to find nowadays.
I would say it's definitely an endangered species, and unfortunately, finding out the truth about what's going on in this country does require work. It requires research and scholarship and discernment and careful, thoughtful analysis. If you just want to sit there and be told what to believe by anybody, then you're going to be the victim of the first really good-looking, convincing liar who comes along.
Yes, sir. Now, another thing, as on the voting thing, so far as the popular vote versus the electoral college. An example comes to mind, a very current example, and that would be the pipeline. The popular vote voted to take the pipeline out of the city that it was originally going to go through and put it where it is now. and the Electoral College would be the one that says, oh, no, you're not. Does that make sense, or am I correct in that assumption?
Well, the electors from those states where they don't have state laws constraining them, the electors can vote for whoever they want, and that was put in as a safety mechanism if a populist demagogue succeeded in getting the majority of the vote, but the electors understood that this person was really kind of dangerous for the country. Imagine in Germany when Hitler was rising to power, if there'd been an electoral college overlooking his electoral win, they might have said, "This guy really is going to be bad for the country, and we're going to call it off." It's supposed to be a safety feature, but it's not supposed to be used to steal the election. Anyway, I'm sorry, Ken. I'm going to have to let you go. We got to take a break for station ID. I got a couple more calls to get to, and then we're going to go back to the news and close the phone lines. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 2. We're actually going to close the phone lines for a little bit. We're going to take 2 more phone calls and then close the lines because I got a bunch of news I need to get to. And before I go back to the phones here, Andy in Texas, if you're still listening to this show, I am getting a lot of email about your phone call, and the word hero keeps appearing over and over and over again, so you just take that to heart, okay? All right, now, back to the phones here. Steve in California, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, sorry to call back, but to your comment to the caller that from the Gulf War, I understand the other caller was correct that as you get older, you kind of reanalyze it, your whole life and your actions, what you've done, and later on realize you did some things you shouldn't have done, but it was all in good faith, and you were right on that. But what you didn't mention, and I know you've mentioned this before, is that many of the independent media sites are blocked on the military bases from observation, and so, you know,
that's
keeping
a good point.
A soldier in the dark about the truth is kind of what they have in mind. An educated soldier, what's really going on, won't follow orders, and so these sites have been blocked.
Oh, my website has been banned on military bases for years now, and of course now they're trying to do that to the country as a whole. And basically turn us into one giant military base, where we will all follow our orders of our authorized rulers and all the rest of that other stuff. Anything else, Steve?
No, that's it. It's just very much scripted on the military bases. I was in the military, and I know they won't let you look at certain things, and they just want to keep you in the mode of what they're thinking and not educate you. So that's it.
Yeah, you think the propaganda we're being flooded with here in civilian life is bad? I mean, when you're in the military, you are constantly immersed in a propaganda illusion, and they don't want you looking at anything. Some of these people.
Well, you're also forgetting what GI actually stands for.
General
Inductee.
Inductee.
For government issue.
Oh, okay.
Government issue.
I thought it was General Inductee. I stand corrected.
No, actually, it's government issue. They own you.
Okay.
They own you for your tour. They own you.
All right. Well, Steve, thanks an awful lot. We're going to take a phone call from Elizabeth in Connecticut. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Michael. I'm going to open a can of worms here. I hope you listen to me. I mean, about the Pizzagate thing, it's being talked about in the media that it's about this pizza shop, and that's not what it's about at all. It starts from WikiLeaks emails. And
okay, I'm going to stop you right here. Because the reason we know this was a setup from the beginning, or the reason I knew it was a setup from the beginning, is they took a Podesta email, and probably this was being done to distract from everything else that was in the Podesta emails. They picked out some words and just pronounced, these are code words used by pedophiles, and this means this, and this means that. And if you look at the logos on the pizza parlor and squint really hard, it kind of sort of maybe looks like a symbol that somebody somewhere said is a sign from. It was all assumption and hypothesis.
It's not just that, though.
Look,
it's not just that. It's also around, like, strange pedophile art. And there is a trafficking problem, and if you recall...
No, I understand this. Okay, hang on. I understand pedophilia is a problem. We've got a story about it a little bit later in the show. I understand that Podesta's got some kind of bizarre taste in his art. But this was set up to try and damage the independent media, possibly open us up to defamation lawsuits, and certainly with that shooting incident, which also feels as fake as the rest of it, to possibly create the argument that the independent media is leading to violence in the streets and therefore we have a right to shut that down. Forgetting, of course, how the corporate media fanned up all the racial violence in Baltimore and Trayvon Martin and the rest of that. Anyway, we're going to let you go here and switch over to John in Barbados. Aloha, John. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Michael. I have some serious breaking news.
Okay.
The CIA agents and other intelligence officers that are trapped inside Aleppo, they're trying to airlift them out by helicopter, but according to my information, these helicopters, U.S. helicopters, are coming under serious ground fire.
I would not be surprised at all. They have absolutely no business being there.
So it's looking rather desperate as far as John Kerry's trying to institute another ceasefire. I don't think Putin's going to take it on. They're going to go right through with it.
It's too late. The rest of the jihadis surrendered. Aleppo is now back under Syrian government control. They missed the timing.
Well, I think the thing what threw it was that these people inside Aleppo gave the coordinates to that emergency field hospital, which was shelled and killed 2 Russians, which I think put the lid on any of them ever trying to get out alive.
Yeah, that was a very dumb thing for the CIA to do, to give the rebels the coordinates of the hospital, because that has angered Russia. And maybe the point was to try and goad Russia into doing something that the U.S. could point to and say, oh, they're being aggressors, they're harming civilians, blah, 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 blah. But it's all thrashing about. Kerry and Obama are absolutely no match for Vladimir Putin. He grew up in a culture that is just, entrenched in playing chess and thinking strategically. And America's culture is more about poker or hearts and the bluff and the bluster and the chess thumping. And Putin has just had them outclassed all the way along. But my understanding is that basically Aleppo is liberated. The last of the jihadis either surrendered to the Syrian army or they've accepted a government deal to leave for Turkey, and they're on their way out. And so, yeah, the U.S. has a big problem because of all these CIA mercenary assets and special operatives who were in Aleppo. When they get captured by either Syria or Russia, they're going to be put on global display, and it's going to be an ugly, ugly situation for the United States to try and explain the way out of.
Well, I think this shelling of that field hospital was the final straw, which broke the camel's back as far as Putin was concerned. He totally ignored Kerry's pleas, and now they're just going ahead and taking over. That's it. Yeah,
that's it. Aleppo is on. I'm going to be talking about that in a little more detail further in the show. Anyway, John, got to let you go. Got a lot of news I need to cover. And before we get to the news, quick shout-out to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. We're still talking about real news, fake news, trying to a government that lies and has lied all the time is trying to get back to a world where you have no choice but to believe their lies. They're in panic mode. If they can't lie with impunity, they don't know how to run a government. They've gotten by with lies, fraud, and deception so long, they don't know any other way to run a nation. And that's why they're in a panic. Story coming out of Zero Hedge. The tech titans team up to block extremist content with a centralized censorship database. They're setting up a new server. It's going to be up there sometime early next year, where all of us Russian propaganda websites will be listed, and everybody signing onto this system, any content from any of these websites will be automatically blocked. Now, what is this going to do? Successfully shut us down? I don't think so. Somebody sent me a graphic from Game of Thrones where Tyrion Lannister comes on out with this wonderful statement. One of the things I like about Game of Thrones, wonderful script writing. They've got wonderful, wonderful writers on that show. And he says, just because you tear a man's tongue out doesn't mean you proved he lied. All you've proved is how afraid you are of what he has to say. And that's exactly what's going on here. Now, what's going to go on, of course, is this centralized censorship database is going to convince people not to use any companies that are part of it. They're going to be flocking to all these new startup social media organizations and companies that are censorship-free. And looking at the Alexa rankings just of Gab, which is the censorship-free alternative to Twitter, it's taking off. I mean, it's a huge success. Their numbers are skyrocketing, and meanwhile we're hearing that the stock value of these entrenched pro-censorship dictatorial social media companies, Google, Facebook, Twitter, their stock prices are in decline. They're in trouble. Now, CBS is out there pushing this idea that if you are a loyal American, you will download special filtering software for your web browser that will make sure you never get to see anything the government doesn't think you should see. Propernaut is offering a similar plugin. Nobody's going to download that stuff. What are they going to do next? Mandate it? You will put this filtering software on your computers. My guess is it will be built into Windows 11. That's how scared they are. And it's not going to work because anybody who knows they're being lied to by the government and the corporate media, they're going to find a way around. They're going to use proxies. They're going to use aliases. They're not going to be able to do it. China tried to do it. Didn't work. They're panicking. And it's getting even more insane than that. Over at IntelliHub, they're reporting that corporate media is pushing for the U.S. government to investigate all of those websites on the Washington Post smear list for espionage. Wow, I always wanted to be James Bond! Now, a little message to the corporate media here and the U.S. government. We in the independent media, we're not the ones who had classified information stored on private email servers. We don't have so-called charitable foundations that aren't doing much charity into which millions and billions of dollars from foreign interest is pouring. There is far more reason to investigate Hillary Clinton for espionage than us. But it's just a measure of their panic. You can see how they're panicking. The good times are over. Those multi-million-dollar paychecks to lie to the American people are about to dry up. And they don't want that to happen. They make a good living lying to the American people. They don't want that to go away. Now, one of the problems the corporate media is having to deal with is coming up for a definition of fake news. I mean, they're out there, we're declaring war on fake news, but they can't actually say what it is. They're thrashing around saying, how do you define fake news? And they're pointing to those websites like that one guy in California with 25 websites that's putting out absolute junk and viral hoaxes. And, well, that's fake news. And I would actually agree. He's a disinformation operative. The problem is what they're calling fake news is actually anything contrary to the U.S. government and corporate dogma. But they can't admit that. They can't come on out. These prostitutes and correspondents can't come on out to their audience and say, our goal here is to be able to go on lying to you for profit and not have you have any way of finding out whether we're lying to you or not. Of course, it's easy to know when they're lying. Their mouths move and words pour forth. And a lot of people are seeing this as the death throes. Story out of wakethechurch.org. The fake news campaign signals the collapse of the globalist system. And it's saying the same thing I am. The desperation by the New World Order is so apparent at this point, we really need to just stop and take a moment to consider just how irrelevant the corporate media and the political class really is to our everyday lives. We're brainwashed into thinking that our entire existence hinges on what we see from that TV set and the words coming out of our politicians. But they're just out here to loot us, make profit off of us. Some of them are very arrogant about it. Andrew Carnegie actually believed, and some of the money he poured into his foundation supported this, that the super rich are a distinct species of human beings, a superior one. Sort of following along with H.G. Wells' The Time Machine, the Eloi and the Morlocks. And the super rich are the Morlocks, and the Eloi only exist to be fed upon and used, which makes it morally okay to put toxic additives in our food like carrageenan, and then when we get sick from it, turn around and sell us medicines. It's all about the profit. Now, interestingly enough, of course, you have all of Hillary's people out there screaming that Donald Trump is going to be a dictator. He's going to shut down freedom of speech. Well, look at all the attacks on freedom of speech that have been going on over the last 8 years. It's the Democrats doing it. It's the Democrats who want freedom of speech shut down. It's the Democrats who want the fake news sites shut down, along with the corporate media. Amazingly enough, Time Warner CEO Jeff Bewkes told Business Insider's Henry Blodgett on Tuesday that the real threat to the First Amendment does come from the Democratic Party and not from Donald Trump. This is somebody high up in the corporate media saying this. And you live with a government that lies to you, telling the truth is a revolutionary act. And truth is a hate crime only to those with something to hide. And there's a lot of stuff being hidden. Speaking of being hidden, a little bit of good news on the Julian Assange front. Story coming out of Investment Watch blog. Somebody has leaked the SMS records from the cell phone of the woman who supposedly had accused Assange of raping her. And the SMS records show the woman had had consensual sex with him, and the police were obviously out to get Assange. They were out to get Assange. He was a threat to the system. And basically, he was framed, which we kind of knew all along. So, all right, let's get into the war zones here. And as John in Barbados commented, the U.S. is desperate to pull their key people out of Aleppo. The jihadi leaders that they've been sending the weapons to, who know what's going on, the people who know where those chemical weapons really came from, the CIA agents, the mercenaries, the other special forces that were on the ground helping to fight the war against Assad. They're trapped in Aleppo now. And Kerry was out there talking about another humanitarian pause and another ceasefire. And even the Arabic language Al-Hadis is saying the U.S. is attempting to rescue their spies from Aleppo. But it all has changed dramatically because basically the U.S.-backed terrorists are running like heck, and Aleppo's old city is now fully liberated by the Syrian army. People are actually starting to return home to Aleppo. There are demining operations underway right now. And I think what is really very telling is this article that came out of antiwar.com, where U.S. officials are out there saying Al-Qaeda's loss in Aleppo is also America's loss. And there it is right there in black and white. The U.S. was on the side of Al-Qaeda and ISIS against the legitimate elected government of Syria. They're not even really trying to hide that any longer. Not much point to it anyway. And yes, there's still time for them to send in stealth fighter rather, or a stealth cruise missile, who knows what they've got, and just take out Assad. Now, there are reports that Israel has carried out 2 attacks against Syria. This may be the opening salvo in a renewed aggressive push to get on in there. Apparently, surface-to-surface missiles were fired into Syria from the Golan Heights, which is under Israeli control. And apparently, there was a bombing near Damascus, near the capital city. Israel is officially denying both of them, but it's a question of who else would be in there, violating other people's airspace and dropping weapons here. Now, there's a new news accuracy site called Root Claim that has come on out and said that the corporate media did, in fact, blame the wrong side for the Syria chemical attack, saying that the attack was actually conducted by rebels opposing Bashar al-Assad. And, of course, the United Nations chemical weapons inspectors came to the exact same conclusion when they were out there saying, oh, the Assad is gassing his own Alawite supporters with sarin gas right in front of the chemical weapons inspectors on the very day they arrived. Really, John Kerry? Why would Assad do something like that? And that's how you knew it was a story. Look, anytime you're fed a story by the corporate media or the government, look for what should be there and isn't. And what was missing from this story of Assad gassing his own Alawite supporters with a banned chemical weapon was a reason for him to do something that stupid. First of all, because they were his own supporters. And second, because it would obviously open the door to an invasion by the United States. And nobody who was on that Assad gassing his own people lie could come up with any kind of a reason why Assad would do it. There was no motive. That was the missing piece that revealed the whole thing to be a lie. All right, we got to take a break for commercials. I got to chase some bad people off my server, and we will be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And here we are. Now, apparently, on the verge of losing Syria, things are now going to ramp up elsewhere. Sort of like whack-a-mole. Can't get them here, we're going to go over and pound on these people. And we're seeing an escalation of attacks against Libya, which is another country that refuses to have a U.S. puppet government, and so that's still going on over there. And whereas the U.S. is using Saudi Arabia as a proxy in Yemen, they're apparently using the United Arab Emirates as a proxy to go into Libya. Now, that may change dramatically very soon because Russia has just made a deal with Libya's Haftar to supply military arms to Libya in exchange for the use of a military base near Benghazi. So now you're going to have a Russian military presence on the ground in Libya, which is going to make any attacks from outside very dicey indeed. Russia's getting ready to do to Libya what they did to Syria. D.C. really bollocksed up this whole we're going to conquer the world nonsense, didn't they? But then look throughout history and see how well we're going to conquer the world has worked out in the past. Eventually, no. Alexander the Great did a really good job of it, and it all fell apart as soon as he died. John Kerry is now out there admitting that Israel gets over half of all U.S. foreign aid, more money than is given to the rest of the world combined. And then he complains Israel doesn't pay attention to anything the U.S. says. Stop signing the checks, John. That'll wake him up. Speaking of checks in the economy, investors are pushing Gold Eagle sales to record high. This is still a good time to be getting into precious metals. In fact, there's never really a bad time to get into precious metals. Sooner or later, the mechanism to try and hold the price down, it is going to fail. There's been another banking rigging scandal. J.P. Morgan, HSBC, Credit Agricole Bank Cartel fined $521 million for rigging the Euribor. It's just fraud, 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 fraud. They're crooks. They're bank robbers. And it's easy for them because they own the bank. Now, as you know, following the collapse of Renzi's referendum over the weekend, a lot of concern about the Italian banks, and Monte Paschi is a cause of tremendous concern. They've already had 2 previous taxpayer-funded bailouts, and it doesn't stick, because the more money you take away from the taxpayers to bail out the bank, the less money the people of the nation have to conduct commerce and business off of which the bank could start to make a profit. They're going in the wrong direction. Reuters is reporting, based on 2 sources, Italy is preparing to take a $2 billion euro controlling stake in Monte Paschi. In other words, they're going to nationalize the bank. And that may be the only way to bring it under control, to run the bank for the benefit of the nation and its people instead of for the bank's private owners. Now, over in Dallas, their mayor has filed a lawsuit to block withdrawals from the police pension fund following what he describes as a run on the bank. People are very concerned about that police pension fund. It's underfunded, and it could collapse, and it's underfunded because they invested back in 2008 in those mortgage-backed security bonds, which were fraudulent. And that's why they're in trouble. That's why so many pensions are in trouble. So, down in Brazil, they're having riots, and the police are having to contend with people who are rioting, unpaid workers. The government is still talking more austerity measures to make the bankers happy, and it's making the people very unhappy. Venezuela's inflation has gotten to the point where they're starting to print and issue larger denomination bills. They're on their way to Zimbabwe with 100 trillion whatever notes. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're talking about the economic news. And Russia's Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline is now causing consternation in the U.S., saying it's a threat to European security. No, it's a threat to the profits of the owners of the other pipelines. That's what this is really all about. One of the main reasons for the invasion of Syria is that Israel is stealing Syrian oil from underneath the Golan Heights. They wanted to sell it to Europe, and they had the chutzpah to ask Assad to let them run a pipeline across Syria so they could pipe their stolen Syrian oil to sell in Europe. And Assad, of course, said no. It's not going to be a schmuck. And that was a big reason for, we must have a regime change. How dare he be upset we're stealing the oil under the Golan Heights? How dare he refuse to help us take the stolen oil up to Europe and make a profit? And by the way, have you noticed all these U.S. officials that are so got their knickers in a twist about the Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline just shrug their shoulders over that one up in North Dakota? Yeah, big deal. It's only the Indians. Who cares about them, right? Now, our college students who are traumatized by Donald Trump's election and whining and crying and needing their Play-Doh and hiding in their safe space, they're not doing very well economically because a lot of them have gone $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 into student loan debt in exchange for their liberal indoctrination and absolutely no job skills. But it's even worse than that because apparently college students are having to resort to the food banks. Half of the college students surveyed say they suffer from meal insecurity. They're missing meals. Well, I missed a few meals when I was going to college because I paid for my college education as a professional magician, and sometimes business was a little slow. That's just a reality of working your way through college. But it is an indicator that, things are really very bad in this country. Now, obviously, if you're studying in school, you have to have good nutrition. One of the two food projects that Claire and I support here on Oahu is to provide food bags to students at a local school in the last week of every month because the food stamp money, because of our high food prices here in Hawaii, the food stamp money runs out in week number 3. And prior to this program getting started up, these students were going to school and trying to learn hungry the last week of every single month. And that shouldn't be happening in this country. Now, United Airlines has decided on yet another way to gouge the traveler. And they have announced plans that if you want to use the overhead bin in their passenger airplanes, you must now pay a fee. Otherwise, just shove it under the seat and keep your legs and feet all cramped up for the trip here. If you want to use that bin, there's now a fee on that. At the rate they're going, it'll be pay toilets on those airplanes. And because you're kind of stuck there, I can imagine it's going to be a very expensive pay toilet. It's open season on the American consumer. And I got to tell you, if United goes forward with this thing about charging for the overhead carrier, I will avoid United Airlines. I'll take a turboprop multi-hop piston whacker before I go on a United Airlines jet. They do this. It's ridiculous. The amount of luggage you can take gets smaller and smaller. You get charged huge amounts of money if you go over the weight limit. And because of the oil price war, the actual cost to run these airlines in terms of the fuel has actually gone down. Now, the airlines are saying we have to charge for overweight luggage because it's using up fuel and all the rest of it. The fuel prices are going down. This is just another way to gouge the public for money. You almost get a sense they understand the crash is coming. And the rush is on to just grab as much money from the population as possible before it all starts coming apart here. Now, there's a little bit of good news. Apparently, following discussions with President-elect Donald Trump and the SoftBank Group's plan to invest $50 billion in the U.S., Apple's top assembler, Foxconn, is now going to invest in the United States. They're going to start manufacturing Apple's products here in the United States again. And that's going to be a real victory. I hope they can find young people who actually have the skills to work in high tech, as opposed to standing around saying, I'm offended, oh, please take care of me, I need a safe space here. Now, counteracting Apple's bringing their some of their manufacturing back to the United States, apparently the Obama administration has now approved a plan to allow F-16 fighter jets to be built in India. So those jobs are going to go away. You can put that on Obama's legacy. By the way, one of Michael Crichton's lesser-known books is called Airframe. You should hunt that one down. And while it's about the airline industry, and it's very well researched, as are all of Michael Crichton's books, it was really talking about the economic effects of globalism and how harmful it was going to be to America. Crichton was so ahead of his time on so many of these. And one of the things I admire about Michael Crichton was that once he reached a certain point in his wealth where he felt he had enough to be comfortable, and he was living out on Kauai up until he passed away, he started writing books not to make money, but to make social commentary. Airframe was one of them. State of Fear was another. Another one of his books, Swarm, about nanotechnology. Very insightful books. But Airframe is about the airline industry, and I can certainly understand why nobody is considering making that one into a movie. But I'm sure you can hunt it down and take a look at it. Now, there's a story coming out of Blacklisted News, and it's commenting on a very, very alarming trend. Local governments are literally starting a war on the homeless. Cities all over America are passing laws that make it a crime to feed and shelter the homeless people. If you hand money to the homeless, if you feed them, as we do through one of our programs here, you may be committing a crime for which you can be thrown in jail. But of course, it's perfectly legal to feed and shelter the illegal immigrants and the refugees, right? Just the real Americans. We don't want to see those people around. But the immigrants and the refugees, sure, give them all you want. And the immigrants and refugees are giving back. Apparently up in Sweden, 5 Afghan migrants raped a boy and then threatened to post it on social media if he reported them. Apparently he actually did. Another video has come on out about a migrant just kicking a random German woman down the stairs of a subway. So, let's see, moving forward here. Oh, I love this story. This is a good one. I mentioned before on the show, we're going to talk about pedophilia. This is not Pizzagate. This is a story that was over in the Mirror in Great Britain. Marcello Fabian Piccolo, 42-year-old music teacher, and apparently had worked at a preschool where he was accused, actually was convicted of sexually molesting the children, and for some reason hadn't been sent to jail. So he's in a cathedral playing his trumpet, and all of a sudden the parents attack, and they beat him to death with his own trumpet. And this is an absolute tragedy, because that trumpet could have been given to a music student. Although I don't know that I would want to put my lips on that mouthpiece, considering where the last owner's lips had been. But that's beside the point here. All right, we're going to go ahead and open the phone lines and take a phone call. Brendan in San Francisco, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. I'm just thinking about Joe Biggs' exit from InfoWars. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I'm not up to speed on that. I don't know why it happened.
Just kind of what's going through my mind is I've been feeling for quite some time I'm actually wasting time listening to Alex Jones as opposed to his evening news. The amount of time consumed versus the amount of information that's conveyed is zero-sum game. I mean, I truly feel as though I'm just wasting my time with Alex Jones. Do you have any thoughts? And can you recommend any other alternative sites other than your wonderful source?
Well, I think the best thing to do is to visit all of them on a rotating basis, because the whole point of the independent media being a bunch of separate broadcasters is to preserve a diversity of opinion. I think it's a mistake for you to settle on one media outlet and just say, I'm going to go there and get what I need, because there's a lot of bias out there. A lot of the online media is, in fact, owned by corporations now. They're trying to buy it all up. People have their biases, and people can make mistakes. And so my advice would be, listen to Alex Jones a little bit, listen to me a little bit, listen to John Stadmiller a little bit. Alex Jones' operation has grown quite large. He's very well funded. And I think it's reasonable to say that he's probably going through some growing pains as he tries to evolve his little media operation.
I actually posted a couple of things to WhatReallyHappened.com website, hoping that you may reference them. One in particular was Call of Duty Goddess. She did some really good analysis on Aleppo and, Syria. And then I literally probably have over 50 sites on my YouTube that I go through regularly. And this is how I've come to the conclusion that there is some really good information out there, and that I'm really getting ready to drop not InfoWars, but Alex Jones in particular. But right now, the corporate media would love nothing better than to see us in the independent media start to fight amongst ourselves, divide and conquer here. And now's not the time to do it. Alex Jones and I have had a tumultuous friendship over the years. We certainly don't agree on certain things like Israel. We agree on a great many other things. And I will always be grateful to Alex Jones, because it was he who 9 years ago got me my start in talk radio. And that's obviously something I cannot overlook at this point. Right. It's just odd. He unceremoniously dropped Jakari Jackson and then now Joe Biggs. But I want to make a distinction. I think InfoWars, apart from Jones, is doing pretty good work. And it is, if you do follow them regularly, you can see a little bit of a shift. And I totally agree with you. We do not want to get into throwing rocks at each other. But I just do want to be clear that if in an 8-hour day, I do not want to waste an hour on some guy. There's a lot of little tit for tat name calling stuff going on over there that is kind of new. And on that note, I will let you go. And thanks again, Mike.
All right. Well, thanks an awful lot for the phone call. Because I'm tied up with my own show and RBN, I don't pay a lot of attention to what's going on in other people's media outlets. It could be economics, where Jones had to cut staff. It could have been a faction fight, could have been creative differences. We don't know. And that's the only thing that we do know is we don't know, and I don't want to be out here and guessing about what's going on over at the InfoWars and Alex Jones. But I think the caller's right. We need to recognize that over the years, Prison Planet, InfoWars has done a lot of really, really, really good work, and let's just hold that uppermost in our thoughts. Just as RBN has done a lot of really good work, Breitbart has done a lot of really good work, RBN continues to do really good work, and, of course, that other site out there in Hawaii. We're going to go back to the phones here. Kathleen in Paris, aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Michael.
Hi. Can you turn down your speaker behind you so we don't get an echo?
Oh, I did. Is it better now?
It's much better. Thank you.
Well, I'm right on topic this time, and you're talking about alternative places to have news. And a new one that, for me, is this activist post. A young man named Nathan in his garage with his cat. I don't know if you've ever watched
I'm
him.
familiar with him. Not the cat. I don't know the cat. I'm not a cat person. I'm a dog person.
Yeah, he's got a cat. And it seems like this one-man show, kind of like you, and he doesn't even have, somebody controlling the equipment for him. And he started taking calls like you, too. He didn't do that for a while, but now he is. And he said something that was heartening for us and in this alternative. He said that we have only, we can only grow. It was optimistic that people who are awakened, they never go back to sleep.
That's true.
After you're awake, so that was heartening, that we can only grow.
Well, that is certainly true, and you're absolutely right. Once people wake up to the fact that they're being lied to by their government, there's no way to take them back. I mean, the corporate media and the government have taken on the impossible task of trying to get us to all believe in Santa Claus one more time, so that they can use it to threaten us to behave good, or we're going to get coal in our sock. But but you're absolutely right. We can only grow from here. We're at the bottom. Where can we go but up at this point? And there are a lot of parallels with the early days of just radio itself, where it was just little one-room studios out in the farm fields, and the antennas were up there, and it became a major industry. And I think we're seeing the independent media is poised to really take off. If we can prevent Hillary from stealing the White House and Donald Trump is inaugurated on January 20th, I think 2017 is going to be a banner year for the independent media to make its presence felt, because Trump clearly is not handing the White House advantage to the corporate media. He's bypassing them. Trump understands the corporate media was against him. They're still against him. They're in attack mode against Trump, his agenda. They're in attack mode against us. And the public is looking at them and realizing something has been going on all along that they need to pay attention to. Anyway, Kathleen, I need to let you go. We need to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're going to take another phone call. Laura in Colorado. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, aloha, Mike. It's extremely cold where I am right now. We're expecting minus tonight, but I wanted to comment on what you've been talking about the alternative media. My life has been so enriched by so many talk show hosts on different networks. Mm-hmm. And I plunk around and listen to different shows. I absolutely love your show, and I love your level of information. And, I think that it's time that if the alternative media hosts could stop with the egotism, and I'm not talking about everybody because I'm a host on a different network. Okay. And this morning I had Jim Fetzer on my show, and I called for unity with all of the alternative media to stop picking and poking, and you have not done that. I have never heard you treat other people that way on your show. Mm-hmm. And I'm calling for unity with everyone to say, you know what? A moment ago you said you're more of a dog person than a cat person. You wouldn't believe how many alternative media hosts I've tried to reach out to and contact by email and not gotten any response whatsoever, because maybe they're a dog person and I'm a cat person. And I'm just using that as a metaphor, okay? But I'm not joking. I mean, people on RBN I've tried to reach out to, people on other networks I've tried to reach out to and say, look, contact me. I listen to your show. I love your show. Not even respond to me at all, even when I would put in the address line of the email, urgent from another talk show host. No response whatsoever. And
okay, well, Laura, in defense of the industry as a whole, you would be amazed how much email and phone calls we get from people, and we get a little gun-shy after a while because a lot of them are people who are trying to steer us wrong, like the ones who are screaming that I got to post Pizzagate, or they're going to post on Facebook I'm a child molester, or things like that. I get
like 400 emails every day, and I try and read as many as I can. I filter out all the ads and so forth. And so the fact they're not getting back to you is because you may just be lost in the noise in the crowd. And please don't take it personally, and no, it's not because you have a cat. I reject the claim that I'm a speciesist, and so forth and so on. But as far as the call for unity, you are absolutely correct. And I have unfortunately seen other independent media figures feel that they have to attack each other to try and gain a larger audience share, or because of reasons of ego. That is very inappropriate at this stage in the evolution of our industry here. And unity, absolutely. That's why when that other gentleman was going on about Alex Jones, I said, let's tone it down here a little bit, okay? Because I don't agree with Alex Jones on certain issues. I agree with him on the vast majority of the others. Nobody's going to agree with everybody. But let's all remember that we're fellow travelers on that same highway to the truth and restoration of the Republic. And as long as we keep focused on that, we're going to be doing the right thing.
Well, Mike, I totally agree with you. You know, I love Claire coming on your program. I just love what she adds.
So do I.
And my husband doesn't come on my program with me, which is perfectly fine. He's just not that kind of person. But
listen, Laura, I got to put you on hold. I'm not going to hang up on you, but stay on hold. I'm going to come back to you after the station identification. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 3. And we're still talking with Laura in Colorado. And Laura, you had something else you wanted to share with us.
I do, and that was 2 small points. One, you know, you're married to Claire, and I'm married to my husband. We don't agree on everything, and we live in the same domicile. So even though we may not totally agree with a talk show host, maybe their beliefs or their religious beliefs or whatever in the alternative media, we need to stop picking and poking at people over petty, what I consider to be petty things. We have an opportunity right now as alternative media hosts to come together and smack down the mainstream media. We have a huge opportunity. So I want to see total unity in that way. And Mike, that's just about all I've got to say on the deal. I want to tell you one more thing. I bought this LED scrolling sign for the back of my car.
Yes.
And it was like $35 on eBay, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And it's pretty good size. And it plugs into the cigarette lighter. It's better than any bumper stickers you could ever have because you're driving through the town, you're sitting at a stoplight. This thing is scrolling information. Let me tell you what I did. I've got numerous alternative media websites on that LED scrolling. I've got WhatReallyHappened.com. I've got several others, you know, Republic Broadcasting Network, several other shows that I listen to on a regular basis. And it forces the people then behind me in traffic to read that.
Well,
I had, you know, some... Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say I have 2 things. First of all, I would love a photo of that showing WhatReallyHappened.com. The other caution, though, is I hope it's not too tall because you could get ticketed for obstructing that rear view window. So just, you know.
No, it's actually pretty short. It's actually about 2 inches up from the base.
Oh, okay, that's good.
Inch area right there along the base of the rear view window, and it's got the little sticky things. Honestly, I bought this thing for $35 on eBay. It holds 16 different messages. Each message can hold up to 250 characters, and so you can run them like a banner, one right after the other, or you can just pick particular ones. It comes with a little remote, and you can, you know, use the remote to put your messages together, and then you can use the remote to turn it on and off, or select certain messages in the memory that you want to play in a certain sequence. So it's like my new toy. It's like my present to myself. And I go along in traffic in Colorado Springs, and all of the people in traffic, their eyes are kind of go to it because it's moving, you know.
Yes.
And I'm sitting at a stoplight, and they're seeing all these things. And it is what I could do as an individual person to promote all of the talk show hosts that I believe are putting out really super good news, and I don't mean good news as in good news, I mean accurate news, putting out very accurate information, very accurate news, and that kind of thing, so that we can get people away from mainstream media and get them curious and get them to going to the websites that they need to go to get the news that they need to get.
Well, thank you very much for doing that and for including my website and my network in that sign. I would like to ask you to call them the corporate media because they're not the mainstream anymore. the majority of Americans,
That's right.
yeah,
That's right.
you know, the independent media has captured the majority of the audience. That's why they're in a total panic over there. So they're the corporate media.
So, and that is so true.
Yeah, and we're the independent media. I don't use the word mainstream anymore because of the possibility of confusion, but that's where it is. As far as you and your husband and Claire and I don't think you could find two more different people than Claire and I were when we met, but that's a big part, I think, of why our marriage has been so wonderful, because we have so many differing views, and we talk all the time, and, you know, we don't have arguments or anything like that, but I think sometimes compatibility is a little oversold, because if you're exactly like your life mate, you're going to get bored after a while because you agree on everything, you think the same thing.
Absolutely right.
And for Claire and I mean, even 22 years on, actually 25, it's been 25 since we met, you know, we do have very lively discussions about all kinds of things. And one of the reasons I do have her on the show is because she's looking at the same headlines and stories I am, but she has a very different perspective on them that I think our audience enjoys hearing that different point of view. Again, it's all about diversity of opinion.
You are so correct. And, you know, my husband and I agree on a lot of things, but we don't 100% agree on everything. And we also have very lively discussions, as I'm sure that most successful marriages have. You know, one is an A and one is a Z. That's what they used to say. And the thing is that both of us are actually part A and part Z. We're just, you know, some of it is the same and some of it is different. And we all get along really good because of that. I asked my husband if he wanted to come on my show, and he just smiled and shook his head. No, you know, because he's just a very different person than that. He's not like I am. So, but that's great, you know, because it makes for a very good existence. But Mike, I wanted to, just say thank you so much for what you do. I actually was invited about 7 years ago onto a blog, I'm trying to say it right, well, it's not Blogspot, but anyway, Blog Talk Radio, there we go.
Yes, I remember.
And
that.
I did a show on there. I did a show for about 6 months on there, and then another network asked me to join them, and I did. So I've been doing a show. I've been on 3 different networks, and I've been doing a show and just really enjoy doing it. It is a 100% volunteer effort on my part. I tell that to everybody. I don't have a website and I don't have products. I just, you know, am doing this because I believe that this is what I'm supposed to do. This is what I'm supposed to do with my life.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. And it's like I keep saying, the corporate media wants to blame independent media for their financial downturn and the loss of trust. But they did it to themselves. If the corporate media had been doing the job they promised us they were doing, watchdog on government abuse, we wouldn't be here in the independent media. None of us are getting rich doing what we're doing. We're subject to harassment and abuse and all of this very negative stuff, like the Washington Post smear. But it's necessary to have a fully informed public. Anyway, listen, Laura, thank you very much for the phone call. And I take back all the bad things I said about your cat. And
I've got several cats. It's all good. But thank you so much, Mike, for giving me a voice on your program for just a little bit to call out for unity and say we have got to start getting together, those of us in alternative media. And
independent media. Alternative has a negative connotation. All right, Laura, we're going to let you go here, and we're going to do a quick shout-out to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. And before I get back into the news here, a little bit of an announcement here. A lot of people have been very concerned about the podcast page at Republic Broadcasting has been having difficulties for the last few days. And what I've been told is that demand for the podcast of all of the RBN shows has gone up to the point where the server has been overloaded, and they're buying a new server in the process of moving over there to this much more powerful server, which will be handing out podcasts for all of the Republic Broadcasting shows. Meanwhile, until it comes online, there's a link permanently stuck at the top of the content section on the main page of an alternative podcast storage site that you can go to, and that is wrh.crucialnonsense.com, and it also has copies of all my RBN shows and so forth. Also, you can catch replays on the Listen Live line, which is area code 605-562-5111, and I think you have to type in a 9 to get my show. Okay. All right, there we are. So let's move on forward here to more of the news. And the phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. So as Laura was telling us, it's very cold in Colorado. Actually, it's cold all over the country right now. The old Farmer's Almanac had it absolutely correct. Winter arrived late, but it's arriving very, very hard. Snow has fallen across Metro Vancouver for the first time in 1,000 days. I'm going to have to give Jim Goddard grief about that because he's always talking about how wonderful the Vancouver weather is and they're not suffering from all of this cold that's coming on down from the Arctic. Well, we got you on that one there, Jim. And the original forecast was for 5 centimeters. It turned into 15. And just a heavy, heavy snow coming on in. The Arctic chill arrives in Colorado, bringing frigid temperatures and snow. Denver got supposedly 4 inches of snow today. And the first snowfall to hit Illinois was a record-breaking event. All-time records for snowfall for this date set all over there. Up in North Dakota, and we saw it on that video when we were talking about the North Dakota, the Dakota Access Pipeline protests and the update about how the construction was still going on. And you could see it was just an intense blizzard there. And it has shut down nearly 300 miles of I-94. And they're saying even more brutal cold is going to follow. And this makes the Ace Hardware story that much more alarming. Now, Ace Hardware is now saying it didn't happen, but there was initially a report that the police had asked Ace Hardware to stop selling the protesters any kind of portable heating equipment, which in this kind of cold amounts to a death sentence. But Ace is now denying that and saying, yes, we're doing that. Over in the Daily Mail, they're saying they're predicting temperatures are going to be 35 degrees below the average for this year. 35 degrees. And they're saying it's another cold Arctic blast. They're calling it the polar vortex, like that's something new, and explains why, even though they're still screaming about global warming, we're getting all this cold weather. Let's see. Major cold will be hitting high plains in Nebraska, Colorado, Kansas, Texas, Wyoming. And they're saying it'll be as much as 35 degrees colder than average for this time of year, according to the National Weather Service. Now, this, of course, is going to lead to another question being asked by John Rappaport. Is the global warming hustle finally falling apart? And he starts out with a very interesting statistic. When Al Gore ended the Florida 2000 debacle, he was pretty much flat broke. He poured everything he had into his race for the presidency, along with all of his donors' money and everything like this. Since he got onto this global warming thing, he has built a fortune of $98 million, pushing this human-caused global warming scam. $98 million. And that's just a small part of the payoff for global warming, because all of these agencies and institutions and scientists were getting all this funding, millions and millions of dollars, to prove humans are warming the planet so we can sell them carbon credits and impose carbon taxes. And little reminder about Al Gore, back when he was starting all this nonsense, a lot of people pointed out how hypocritical it was for him to be talking about taxing carbon and how bad carbon dioxide was, when a great amount of his wealth was invested in Occidental Petroleum. So it was always about the money and about the scam. And Al Gore, of course, has moved from Tennessee to California. He's got a beachfront home, so much for the sea levels are rising. Now, as you know, pharmacology is a big business. Vaccines are $30 billion a year. Prescription antidepressants, right now, 1 out of every 4 Americans are on those things. And a lot of them have very, very negative side effects. And we're being pushed all these medications that are created synthetically in the laboratory because they can be patented and market exclusivity given to the seller to maximize their profits. It's like that guy who bought up this medication and jacked up the price 1,200%. It's all about the profit. And in the rush to get these patentable products, a lot of things in nature are basically being ignored. And we're seeing a story that came out of the InternetPost.com where more and more scientists are starting to go back and look at things in nature that have long had a reputation of being safe and efficacious. And starting back in 2015, there was a growing trend of using psychedelics to treat mental illness, in particular psilocybin, which is the active ingredient in magic mushrooms. And the research has actually reached the clinical trial stage, where psilocybin is actually proving to deal with chronic anxiety and depression more effectively than the prescription antidepressants. And they've been researching this stuff going all the way back to the 1940s because of the war on drugs. No, we're not going to look at magic mushrooms' healing ability. We're not going to look at marijuana's healing abilities. You will buy your patented, very expensive stuff from the corporations. You're not allowed a choice. But apparently they're looking at one of the applications for psilocybin is what's politely termed end-of-life stress. When you are in a hospice and you know you're not going to leave that room ever again, that can be very emotionally upsetting, and the psilocybin can actually help you deal with that. Now, one of the listeners some months ago sent me a gift, and it was a paperback reprint of a natural herbal healing book from the turn of the last century. And it was one of those serendipitous things because I'd had an original copy of the original printing, but I donated it to a museum along with a bunch of other old books. And I had regretted that ever since. As the scale of medical mischief began to grow, I wanted to go back and research that. Now I've got a copy of the book, and I turned to it quite a bit. The issue with the patented medicines is something I call coevolution. When you are using medical herbs from nature, you are dealing with biochemistry that has co-evolved with life on Earth for billions and billions of years. You're not going to get any ugly surprises. These new patented molecules have never existed in nature before, and your body doesn't always know how to handle them. And it is from this that most of the nasty side effects of these chemicals and medications come from. And this also, outside of pharmacology, is a big problem with GMO food, because those altered genes will result in malformed proteins. Now, when you have GMO whatever and you cook it, the actual modified DNA is destroyed and you don't have to worry about it. The worry is protein expression, that these altered genes are creating proteins that are sort of kind of like what's in the natural food, and your body takes them in and tries to fit them into the receptors where those proteins would go, but there's a molecule or two out of place. And that's where these problems start coming on in, and you start reacting negatively. We don't know as much about either human biochemistry or psychiatry, psychology, as we think we do. Every age, the scientists are convinced they know 90% of what there is to know, only to be embarrassed in the next decade. And especially when we're dealing with life, especially when we're tinkering with the very code of life, caution is warranted. Unfortunately, under the press of the drive for corporate profits, we're seeing these technologies being very recklessly developed and very recklessly deployed before they're really fully understood. I keep going back to the Morgellons disease outbreak of about a decade ago, which came and went, and the official story, oh, it's all in their heads. It's all in their heads. But these filaments that were growing out of people had plant DNA in them. And these Morgellons disease cases emerged in areas where early GMO crops were being test grown. And I'm wondering if Morgellons was actually the first GMO accident, and it was hushed up. But we do need to be careful. Now, I'm very pro-science, and I think these technologies can be made to work. But you can't have those who profit from these technologies in charge of the science decisions, because they'll always shortcut. We saw that at Fukushima. We saw that at San Onofre. We saw that at Deepwater Horizon. We're seeing it with GMO. We're seeing it with pharmaceuticals. One of the functions of our government is to keep an eye on these emerging technologies so they do not harm the general population. We'll be right back after these commercials. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. Let's go back and pick up a few headlines that are coming on out. We were talking before about Julian Assange and how the SMS logs of the cell phone of the woman that supposedly charged him with sexual assault have been released and indicate the sex was consensual, and the police basically framed him. Now, Assange has released a transcript of his full testimony to the Swedish prosecutors, reiterating his innocence. And he spent 4 years inside the Ecuadorian embassy in London trying to avoid arrest for a crime which it now appears that he never committed. But when you are speaking truth to power, this is how power likes to respond. You're a sex criminal. You're a child molester. You're this, you're that. You're a Russian spy. You're all the rest. The name calling just keeps piling on. And there's nothing new with that. If you go back and you read my COINTELPRO page, you will hear about how actress Jean Seberg, back in the 1960s, was an advocate for civil rights at a time when the White House wanted to keep racial divide going in this country to prevent the American people from uniting together in opposition to the war in Vietnam. And they destroyed her career. They used Joyce Haber, the gossip columnist for the Los Angeles Times, to plant fake news that Jean Seberg was pregnant out of wedlock with one of the Black Panthers. And it destroyed her career, eventually drove her to suicide. That's where the fake news comes from. We have copies of the actual FBI memos planning this whole thing up. This is how they like to play. And the same thing when my career in Hollywood was destroyed. Ron Paul is right. The fake news comes from the government. And that's why they're in such a bind now trying to claim that the independent media are the fake news. We're seeing a replay of the circumstances that preceded the collapse of the Soviet Union, when the Soviet citizens, using a network of fax machines, started educating themselves to what was really going on in their country. And the government lost the trust and faith of the Soviet citizens. People stopped reading Pravda and Izvestia. And the whole thing started collapsing. We're in that same mode right now. Now, let's see. Apparently, Trump has nominated Oklahoma's Attorney General Scott Pruitt as new head of the Environmental Protection Agency. And apparently over in Germany, members of Angela Merkel's own Christian Democrat Union Party are demanding her resignation over her Muslim immigration policies. Apparently, Merkel coming on out and saying that she was going to ban the wearing of the burqa, and that was going to solve all the problems because the German people wouldn't see that there was a Muslim problem. That seems to have been the last straw. Merkel was planning on running for a new term of office next year. Now her own party has turned on her. Apparently, the House is likely to vote on impeachment for the Commissioner of the Internal Revenue Service, John Koskinen, over the evasions regarding the handling of nonprofits, tax status for conservative groups like the Tea Party. Russians are beginning mine-clearing operations in the areas of eastern Aleppo. And apparently they've arrested 2 kids for allegedly starting the Gatlinburg wildfires. So the claim that this was an attack by ISIS is just more nonsense. Anyway, now then, interesting little story. I'm going to tease it in because we're coming up on a commercial break. Story coming out of Space.com announcing that the universe has 10 times more galaxies than scientists previously thought. Huzzah, 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 huzzah. And basically they're saying there's a new census of galaxies in the observable universe, and there are 10 times more galaxies than were previously thought to exist. Now the giveaway word here is observable. And this, of course, ties into that nonsense about the Big Bang, the divine moment of creation that they're still struggling to find some way to reconcile with the general theory of relativity. So we're going to take a break here. Come on back, talk about more science. Phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. So we're talking about this story where astronomers have announced the universe has 10 times more galaxies than they previously thought. And it's kind of interesting. They'll sit there with their telescopes, and I'm all in favor of building larger telescopes. I'm rather sorry that Hawaii is no longer going to be the site of the new world's largest telescope. The local protesters succeeded in getting the project sent over to the Canary Islands. And but all of these comments about size of the universe and how big it is and everything are all predicated on this assumption, an act of faith, if you will, that Earth happens to sit at the very center of that bubble of expanding galaxies coming out of the Big Bang. And that, of course, is absolutely ridiculous. There's no basis for that. If the universe does have finite limits, and it is a sphere, we could be very close to the edge. We could be, say, 30 billion light years in from the edge of a universe that's hundreds of billions of light years across, and we're only going to see out to the limits of our telescope. And the fact that we can't actually see the edge of the universe is why we don't really know anything about its age. And every time they find a new object that's further out, they'll revise the age of the universe. Oh, we found a galaxy that's 20 billion light years away, therefore the Big Bang happened 20 billion years ago. Well, that doesn't work out either because of the speed of light. If you're looking at a galaxy that's out there in the universe 20 billion light years distant, you're not seeing it as it is today. You're seeing it as it was 20 billion years ago, 20 billion light years away from the Earth. The math just doesn't work on out. So they're just guessing, and unfortunately we're seeing a repeat of the Earth-centered universe as religious doctrine, and everybody is out there trying to reconcile all the fact that the observed reality doesn't match the theory. The observed redshift in the universe is quantized. The Big Bang theory can't account for that. There are certainly many other explanations for why more distant objects would have a greater redshift, such as Rayleigh scattering. But nobody has the courage to stand up and say that prime assumption of a Big Bang creating the universe may be flawed. And look how much money they're putting into it. Like that Large Hadron Collider at CERN. And if you really think about it, it is just like Stonehenge, cathedrals, the pyramids. It is the most fantastic construction that can be built with the technology available of the day to communicate with the gods. It's actually a religious shrine. And they're coming out with ever more obviously biased theories. Oh, the speed of light was truly infinite at the moment of the creation of the universe. That's why it just sort of popped into being as it is. They don't want to let go of that divine miracle that they all want to believe in, because then they would have to question about whether or not they're actually going to be any kind of an existence after they die. There isn't. Get used to it. Let's take a phone call. Tim in Wyoming. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. Thanks for taking my call. I appreciate it. Now, I'm glad you're talking about you hit all these different subjects, science today and all that. But I wanted to mention the reason I called. It's there are people that are using marijuana as I know you're an advocate for it, and I agree with it. Using it for PTSD, for reduction of stress. But I mean, they've used that. There are different different people that have said that it's the best thing that they've ever found. I mean, Willie Nelson says, the biggest killer on the planet is stress, and I still think the best medicine is and always has been cannabis. Willie Nelson, but I know I have a whole bunch of quotes here on marijuana, but anyway, he's just one person who says that stress is greatly reduced by using natural plants.
Yes.
And psilocybin is one of those. I mean, I'm not saying it's something you should use and drive or whatever, because first off, if you can even find the gas pedal afterwards, you're kind of you're not going to be coherent to drive.
Well, now it depends on how much you do. It depends on how much you do, because they actually did a study out on a test track, not real traffic, and they found out that people that had used a little marijuana were actually more focused on their driving, and were actually driving more safely. Okay, obviously, if you've smoked enough marijuana to where you can't remember where you put the marijuana law petitions for your legalization effort, then you've obviously had too much. This automatic demonization, and again, the demonization of marijuana was mostly about protecting the profits of the alcohol distillers and the tobacco companies, because they don't want you to be able to grow anything on your own property and use it that they can't make a profit on. And we're already hearing where marijuana, as it becomes more accepted as a medicinal treatment, is now being patented. So they're going to set this up so that the pharmaceutical companies are going to take something you can grow in your backyard, put it in a capsule, and sell it back to you at a hideous markup. And you'd be surprised how many prescription medications that you pay $60, $80, $100 per bottle for are just ground up stuff that you could be growing in your own backyard.
Well, like you say, $60, $80, or $100 a bottle. I mean, you're talking wholesale prices maybe, because it could be $2,000 or $3,000 for whatever that bottle is.
Well, I'm very fortunate. I have escaped the prescription medication treadmill. I don't actually have any of the little bottles in my medicine cabinet right now. I stick with my alkaline water and my nano silver, and so far I'm doing okay. And of course, I avoid a lot of food additives that cause so many medical problems.
Right. You were mentioning actually a couple days ago about carrageenan.
Yes.
And I thought, well, that's Irish moss. If you see Irish moss also in an ingredient list for whatever product it happens to be. In fact, it's in a lot of chocolate milk. It's actually one of the ingredients that's used in chocolate. If I don't drink milk very much, but if you drink cow juice, as I say, if you drink cow milk, in chocolate infused cow milk, you find carrageenan in there quite often, or it says Irish moss. But there's another one.
Well, before you move on here, because I actually posted an article to What Really Happens main page about carrageenan, and you have to wonder, what are they thinking? Because there's no nutritional value in this stuff at all. And it is a known cause of gastrointestinal inflammation. That's what twigged me on to what was going on, because I was having some issues, and I began to suspect it was the carrageenan in this heavy whipping cream that I put in my coffee. And so I switched to half and half without carrageenan. The problem went away, and I started doing some research. This stuff has been linked to cancer, diabetes, ulcerative colitis. And they put it in the food, and you buy it and eat it, and you get these conditions, and you go to the doctor, and what does the doctor say? Stop ingesting carrageenan? No, here's a pill, here's a lotion, here's a suppository, here's a whatever. And it is a racket.
Right. And they say not just take these pharmaceutical products, but also come back for following follow-up checkups and whatnot, and so they're basically raking it. They're vacuuming your money out of your pocket by your consent.
Well, I'm working on an article right now and pointing out that as you're already aware, the United States has the most expensive medical care in the world by a huge margin. And yet it's very poor in quality. The overall health of Americans is very poor. And in this article, I point out how the amount of the gross domestic product that's being absorbed by the medical industrial complex is hideously out of proportion with other aspects of our lives.
and it really is out of control. Obamacare just made it worse, and everybody's in there because it's this huge racket. And I remember there's this wonderful movie called The Constant Gardener. Ralph Fiennes was in it, and it's based loosely on a true story about the murder of a political activist in Africa. And one of the characters that is in the movie is this doctor who's given up working in hospitals, and he's out there as a volunteer in the field trying to treat these people in Africa. And he basically comes out and says, you know, the big pharmaceutical manufacturers, they're right up there with the weapons dealers in terms of the morality. And he's absolutely right.
Oh. Right. And actually, as you're mentioning that, basically, it sounds like he was operating as one of the Doctors Without Borders, the same people that are.
I think that was the model. Yeah, I think that was the model.
Right. I was just going to say, you know, that our favorite organization, the U.S. federal government, likes to bomb the hospitals where those doctors work, and knowing full well that that's what they are and who they are.
Yeah, it really is. You know, before I made the decision to just quit film and TV work entirely and focus on the radio show and the website, I worked half a season on a show called Off the Map, and unfortunately it was canceled after the first season. And it was a shame because I was in love with the concept of the show. And it was about a group of young doctors who just got fed up with corporatized medicine, and they quit their jobs in the big city hospitals, and they all became volunteers to come out and set up this clinic in a third world country where they didn't have to worry about paperwork and insurance and Obamacare and regulatory whatever. They could just focus full time on what it was they wanted to do, which was heal sick people. And that purity of purpose, I can understand a lot of people probably go into various careers thinking that's what they're going to be working on. I'm going to be healing the sick, and I'm going to be doing whatever. And then over time, they get lured away. Because of Obamacare, doctors now spend more time filling out paperwork than they do seeing actual patients.
That's true. No, when you're talking about the medical bureaucracy, basically, or pharmaceutical bureaucracy as well, and government as well. But when you're talking about that, I worked at two different mental hospitals, and I worked at a standard regular standard care hospital. But when I was there, I would see how the doctors changed, because I worked at a hospital that was a residency hospital, not the mental hospital, obviously. Well, they had residents, but needless to say, but no, the regular hospital actually had doctors that came in with the ideals of the Hippocratic Oath, and they believed it. And there were paintings on the walls. This is a pretty old hospital in California, but there were paintings on the walls that were of Albert Schweitzer and various other doctors, and there was one big poster that had the Hippocratic Oath on it. And I thought, how many doctors actually pay attention to that after a couple of years of medical school and after being beset by the regulation?
Well, it's even worse today because the pharmaceutical corporations have started to exert tremendous influence over the medical schools. And that's why doctors are not trained to deal with nutrition. They're not trained to look for causes of ailments that are in the environment, like products and so forth. All they're taught is if the person has this, you prescribe that. If the person has this, you prescribe this other stuff. And that's it. They're being turned into very expensive, costly sales representatives for the big pharmaceutical companies. Some of them get fed up and quit. There's been a big problem lately between Obamacare and the corruption of the medical process itself. A lot of doctors have quit being doctors.
That's true. What, like you're saying about basically the whoring out of the not necessarily that in that sense, but the buying off of the medical, the gifted medical professionals, or those that go in with the ideals and want to continue in that idealistic vein. They might as well wear billboards, wear sandwich boards, and say, I work for this pharmaceutical company. And if you walked into your doctor's office and saw nothing but bumper stickers or whatever, a billboard on the outside says, I work for such and such, and you should come to me because I could do this and that and the other. And well, how many people? I mean, if doctors, honest doctors, if they were forthright about their purpose for doing what they do,
yeah,
they would.
Well, you know, there's
I'm
sorry to cut you off, but we're running out of time, and I got another phone call I need to get to. A big problem is that the big pharmaceutical corporations will give gifts to doctors to push their products, whether it's actually, attaché cases or medical equipment or free trips to the medical conventions. And I think what we ought to do is on those doctors' white coats is we ought to have the patches of the companies that are giving them stuff to push their products, so sort of like the NASCAR thing on there. Anyway, listen, Tim. I'm sorry to cut you off, but we're running out of time here, and I do want to take one more phone call from Eddie in Ohio. Eddie, thank you for waiting patiently. What's on your mind?
Oh, you know what? I was wondering, I just asked you, and if you could get into as much detail as you can about the flat earther with their evidence or not evidence, or what do you think about that whole theory of...
Well, you obviously were not listening to the first hour of our show because I did cover it. It's another piece of poison. It's another piece of poison the well junk that's being planted on the internet, by these public relations firms, operatives, whatever you want to do, so that the corporate media can point at the independent media and say, these people think the earth is flat. These people think there wasn't a plane at the Pentagon, and they're kooks and nuts and whatnot. And, it's ridiculous. And as I mentioned in the first hour, I had somebody post on one of my, on my YouTube channel saying that if you throw out that whole Foucault pendulum, there's no empirical evidence that the earth is moving. Well, the fact that the Foucault pendulum does show the earth is moving, there's your empirical evidence. And they're not interested in the science. They're interested in tarnishing the internet. And even the National Geographic, in their article last year about why people don't just trust science as it's relayed to them through the corporate media, use the flat earth thing, saying, oh, those people on the internet, they all believe this stuff. No, we don't. It's being planted on us. We don't think the earth is flat. We don't think the Apollo moon landings were fake. That's all junk being put on the independent media, so the corporate media has an easy handle to try and discredit us, because they don't have anything else. The truth is not on their side, and that's the uphill battle that they're fighting. Anyway, Eddie, thank you very much. We're going to let you go.
Thanks, God.
All right, bye-bye. Speaking of lunar eclipses, and specifically the moon, Russia has announced they are planning a permanent lunar base by 2031. It will hold a 12-person staff, and they're already designing and building this huge heavy-lift cargo carrier rocket, which will basically be the bus, the truck, whatever you want to call it, going between the Earth and the moon. And once they're up there, they're probably going to start discovering there's all kinds of commercially exploitable stuff lying around up there. Rare earth elements. That's becoming a major shortage, those rare earth minerals that are crucial to high tech. And that's why all of a sudden we're starting to hear about shortages of RAM and CPUs. They're running out of the raw materials to build them. Got to take a break. Back with the last segment of our program after these few words. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. Last segment of our program today. And I'm looking at an email that came in from a listener, and paraphrasing loosely, they're relating a story where they were doing some work renovating a house, and in the process of tearing up the linoleum and everything, they came across a copy of that Time magazine with Adolf Hitler's picture on the cover, and the stories inside were very glowing and approving of what Hitler had done to Germany's economy. And this apparently was before the word went out from the private central bankers, we're going to have to destroy this guy, at which point the demonization began. If you have not read my article, All Wars Are Bankers' Wars, that is your homework for tonight. Please read it, take notes. There'll be a pop quiz in class tomorrow. Now then, getting on back to the news here. We're beginning to see this tightening of mortgage standards. Now, that's a good thing, because what got us into trouble in 2008 were the so-called subprime mortgages, mortgages being given to people who didn't really have the means to pay those mortgages, especially after that introductory teaser interest rate ballooned. But what happened back in 2008 was the securitization chain was broken.
Before that, if you were a bank or a mortgage company and you were loaning the money to the future homeowner, you would take care that they were going to be able to repay it because you were the one who was dealing with that. When they were doing those mortgage-backed securities and bundling them, the people issuing the mortgages no longer had to worry about repayment because their job was to get the signature on the mortgage and then sell it off for the investment bundle. And that's why things got so wildly out of control. And they've been doing the same bundling with car loans and student loans, home security alarm contracts. It's just amazing how out of control it got. Well, maybe because of Trump coming on in, or maybe because Wall Street is finally realizing what they did wrong, mortgage lending standards are tightening. And that's actually a good thing. Home ownership rates in the U.S. are at an all-time low because we don't have any money to buy homes or cars or anything with. And loosening the requirements for a car or home loan isn't really a solution because you may get that loan signed, but the money still isn't there. And one of the things Donald Trump is going to have to do, and they're going to fight him tooth and nail, he has to bring back that recycling mechanism where the wealth that is sucked to the top of the pyramid is somehow brought back down and pumped back into the bottom of the pyramid as decent wages and salaries so the system can keep on going. Fascism gets rid of that recycling mechanism and eventually it's going to collapse, and that's been the problem. You can't run an economy on a bunch of billionaires. You run an economy on working and middle-class people able to earn a decent living. There's the music. Time for me to get on out of here. We'll be back tomorrow, Thursday, here on the Republic Broadcasting Network. Until then, you are part of the independent media. Take what you learn here. Take what you learn at the website. Share it with everyone you know. We'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.